Hey, well, it's Huck. And it is now, I had my lung transplant October 2nd, which has been 2 weeks and 4 days ago. So I would have been home by now. All of my, all of my recovery um, has kind of led them to believe that I was strong enough to go home. Actually, before 2 weeks were up, they had originally slated me to go home in just under 2 weeks, which would have been Friday. And as it turns out, something happened about Wednesday that put that on hold. And it's fairly common. In my case, what happened was I developed one of the things that happens when you undergo a major surgery, and in this case, a lung transplant surgery, is that your body puts on a lot of added fluid. Your weight goes way up after surgery because your body's not able to flush the excess fluid. When they do the internal surgery and replace the old lungs with the new ones, your chest area becomes disconnected from your lymphatic system. And so under normal circumstances, your body is always producing a certain amount of fluid that gets kind of in certain organs, in your chest cavity, and your body has a way of flushing that through your kidneys and out as a waste product, just in its normal course of your body doing its work. And a lot of that is orchestrated through the lymph glands, through the lymphatic system. But like I say, after major surgery like that, that lymphatic system takes a while to kind of gear up and reconnect and do its job. So typically what happens is you swell up and your body can't get rid of all these excess fluids. And that's what happened to me. That's why I had 6 drainage tubes hooked up to my chest cavity after the surgery. So I went into the hospital weighing about 141 pounds, and the day after surgery in ICU, I weighed 158 pounds, and my body started swelling. My feet started swelling. My arms swelled up like balloons. They were literally, my arms and forearms were twice their size. So I kept telling people I had Popeye arms, and they were so swollen that they literally were leaking this, like wherever I'd been poked or whatever for, blood or given a shot or something. So at any rate, a few days before I would have been going home, they detected a buildup of fluid in one of my lungs. It was in my right lung. And it was having an effect, obviously, on, how that lung was developing. And, of course, the big worry was they could get rid of the fluid. They were afraid, though, that the aftermath might be pneumonia, or at least perhaps some kind of significant infection. In which case, because I'm on anti-rejection medications, that's a problem, and it takes very long to heal and treat. Fortunately, what they did was they gave me what they call a bronchoscopy, and that entails shoving a probe down your throat. They put you to sleep for this, and they suck out all of that fluid. And while they're there, they're checking for, signs of infection or whatever. They take X-rays. So the good news was, yeah, they had a heck of a lot of fluid to pull out. The good news was that there was no infection, no pneumonia. That didn't stop them from giving me a lot of antibiotics through IVs for about the next week. The problem was they decided that after pulling that probe out, draining that, they knew that there would be continual flow of some fluid until all the swelling went down, and it had to go almost, go away. And that has taken some time. So what they did was they hooked up a drainage tube directly from my lungs to this container, and they look at the amount of fluid that has been coming out of that lung each day. And it started off like 1,200 cc's first day, and the next day was like 800 cc's. Then it was 660 cc's, and then it plateaued in the 400, 450 range for like 3 days, 4 days in a row. It just wouldn't go down. They're looking for a trajectory that comes down, and ultimately, when it is only putting out about 100, 150 cc's in a 24-hour period, at that point they're comfortable that my body's finally up to doing the job. They pull the tube and stitch it back up basically, and they can send me home usually within 24 hours. They've got a lot of testing they want to do before they send me home. There's a lot of stuff they have been going over with me to prepare me for things I have to do for myself when I get home. One of the things they want to do is they want to give me a lung function test where I blow into these tubes and find out at what capacity my lungs are. I came in here at about 13%. They're estimating that I'm probably around 50, maybe 60% right now, and eventually we're going to work to get that to be 100%. But at any rate, I've got to take that test before I leave. Another thing that they did, and I don't think I explained this when I last posted, it's typical for people that go through a lung transplant. You have a diaphragm that has like a left side that helps the left lung breathe, and a right diaphragm that assists in the breathing mechanics of your right lung. And typically after surgery, one or both of your diaphragms are not working properly anymore. So during the surgery, they embed some wires into your abdomen, into your diaphragm, and they kind of loop these wires out of your out of your diaphragm, outside of your body, and then loop it back in. So you've got these little wires, looped. You got to see these little loops of wires, on your abdomen when you come out of surgery. And I didn't even know they were there. And so after about, in the middle of the second week that you're in the hospital, they have a team of, diaphragm specialists who come in and they connect a little electronic box, a little stimulator. They hook up some wires to these exposed wires that sends a signal, kind of like a stimulate your diaphragm. And sure enough, which is kind of typical, my left diaphragm was working perfectly. The right diaphragm wasn't working at all. It was giving off no signal that when I breathe or take a deep breath or whatever, that the diaphragm was assisting in that process. And if that's the case, you're never going to get your right lung, in this case, fully developed, because it's not getting the assistance it needs to be operating at full efficiency. You can still live with it, but your lung's not working at its full strength. So the idea is that if they leave this stimulator on until it starts showing that the diaphragm is starting to come around, and so they put it on there, and I had it on for about 3 or 4 days. And in 3 or 4 days, it went from showing no signs of life uh, to like after one day, there was just a littlest blip. The left lung, big, it's like looking at an EKG where, you see the big, uh, thing, blips on the screen. But on the right lung, a tiny little one, tiny. And next day, it was a little bit bigger. And the third day was just a little bit bigger. But the thing is, the diaphragm's working. It's going to take a while for it to build up to full strength. So they had been debating on, some people go home with that stimulator, and they have to wear it maybe for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. There have been cases where for a year.
That's your breathing treatment for you.
In my case, they decided they're going to take the wires out before I go home, and they think it's going to come around by itself. It's stimulated enough to get me started. So they're probably not going to come around now. The discharge is down to about 200 cc's. As early as tomorrow, certainly by this weekend, they're going to pull the tube. And the wires are coming out Saturday. All indications are I'm going to go home Monday. Sunday marks the 3-week mark. So in all other respects, all my other numbers, where my lungs are, my stamina, my ability to get up and walk around, I'm walking 600 to 1,000 feet every day, and 3 times a day. And I'm able to get up and go to the bathroom by myself. I don't need any assistance. I pretty much don't need a walker anymore. I'm not in any great pain most of the time. So they're ready to send me home. It's just this one thing that has really kind of kept me here. And hey, I want to go home as much as anything, but I want to go home well enough that I'm not coming right back, because they didn't fully address the problem. Every Monday and Thursday, once I go home, I'm going to have to come back here for a few hours where they will take blood, they'll do an x-ray. And on the Thursdays that I come here, aside from taking blood and taking x-rays, I will meet with, one of the doctors or maybe a team of people. And they will be making adjustments to my medications according to what these, blood draws show. Probably about 3 weeks from now or so, they're going to give me another one of those things where they put me to sleep and put a probe down in my lungs. This time they'll do a biopsy, because a biopsy is really the only true way they can check for rejection. And there are indications, symptoms that I might come across that would be an indication that maybe I'm rejecting the organ, but they're not consistent, and they'd have to be symptoms that don't go away, that they get worse. I haven't had any of those. So, like, for instance, if my my breathing numbers go down, if I take these lung function tests, and and one day I'm breathing at a 60% capacity, and then the next time I take I have a home version to take now that they've given me. I'll hook up to my computer, and once a day or whatever, I can take this test, and it'll show me, my lung capacity. And if that were to go down suddenly, that'd be a real indication that, maybe something's wrong. But at any rate, they will be adjusting my medication. and I'll have to continue to make visits here. Probably over the next month or so, twice a week. And eventually they'll reduce those to once a week. And the probes will be once a month to start, and for long it'll be 2 months, every 3 months. And that's going to be what I'm dealing with for the next 6 months or so. If things kind of stabilize and they finally get to a point where they don't have to adjust my medication, and maybe I'm able to stabilize with a lower dosage of the anti-rejection drugs that lower my immunity. Once that gets stabilized, for some people it's about 6 months, some people it's about a year. And I get to the point where I can stay infection-free, for a few months, I'll be kind of out of the most dangerous woods. Right now, the first 6 months to a year are really the critical months where you're really susceptible to an infection. And most folks, I don't want to say most folks, let's say 40 to 50% of people ending up having something, either a sign of rejection or more seriously, an infection. And it puts them in the hospital. And it could put them in the hospital for a while to get that straightened out. In some cases, you could be here a month, longer than your initial, post-operative stay. I've heard of one case where a patient came back their first year with such a serious infection. It took them a year in the hospital, and they finally got it. And he hasn't been back since. So, like I say, you go into this knowing the risks, and that's, I've got to take every precaution. As careful as I've been through COVID, because of the new strains of COVID that are coming, where the booster shots apparently don't have any effect. There's a monoclonal antibody treatment that for people like me with compromised immune systems, if they get COVID, this has been the only antibody treatment that works on a COVID infection. Pretty much it's what they've relied on. Anybody that's got a really serious case of COVID that lands them in the hospital and maybe on a ventilator. For people like me that have really suppressed immune systems because of the drugs they have to take, this has been the only treatment available. And these two new strains that are now making up about 11% of the cases of COVID in the United States, and they think within the next month it will easily be the most dominant strain. No vaccines or boosters seem to have any effect on this strain, so you're not protected with the booster shots on this. And that one drug, the one antibody treatment that they use, like I say, if you're hospitalized, indications are it's totally ineffective on these new strains. So the point is, you got to do whatever you have to do to avoid getting COVID. And of course, people are walking around going to work with COVID. They're not isolating. Almost nobody's wearing a mask anymore. So how do you protect yourself in that environment? One, you go out as infrequently as you can. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Caught me in the middle of making
I know. Always the best timing.
That's all right. I do my best. At any rate, so I have to take every precaution, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mask up, double mask, KN95 with a a surgical mask over that anytime I have to leave the house. If I have to go come up here to get my treatments or my blood draws, I won't leave the house without that. I'll sit outdoors on the porch, but if anybody comes within 10 feet of me, they're going to have to be masked, and I've got to be masked. My caregiver, Dustin, who's going to be staying with me, you know, through the first 8 weeks of all this, because I've got a lot of limitations and restrictions. I absolutely have to have somebody there, because I can't do laundry, I can't cook, I can't drive for at least 8 weeks. So up until now, Dustin's the only person that I've been around and not put a mask on. When I'm in the car with him, when he comes over, he's the only one that I haven't, bothered to wear a mask. And part of it is because he's been as careful as I have. He masks in public. He doesn't have a job where he works around a lot of people. He doesn't go dine out. He doesn't belong to anything that puts him around he doesn't have much of a social life. So he's had all the boosters. He's had the most recent one. And like I say, he's real good about wearing masks. He's like me. He'll go through a drive-through or takeout. He'll go one step further than I'll go. He won't go actually inside the restaurant and grab the takeout food. He's not afraid of going in a store, for instance, to pick up a few groceries. But he's always masked. He's always careful. He always tries to avoid close contact with people. So what we're going to do is we've set up my bedroom for the next month or so to be his bedroom. And we've converted my little stereo room, if you will, taken the stereo equipment out of there. And we've installed, Doug got a really good deal from his uncle on a kind of like a hospital bed. It's a remote controlled, adjustable twin size bed. And his great aunt recently passed away. And she had bought this bed, I don't know, just months before she passed away. So it's relatively new. Dustin's uncle sold it to him for like $240. And I'm probably going to end up buying it off of him. I'm really going over financial stuff right now because I'm trying to make this all affordable. I'm going to switch my Medicare account from, starting January, I'm going to be making Medicare premium payments per month. And fortunately, they go down a little bit because of legislation that was passed under the Biden administration, the Inflation Act or whatever it was called. A lot of the provisions in that act affecting things like drug costs and things. Some of those things don't actually go in effect until 2025. So, for instance, like there's a $2,000 cap on all medicines for senior citizens. After January 25th, the most you can pay is like out of pocket for your medicine is $2,000 a year. I think a little sooner than that, the insulin thing goes into effect. You're capped at $35 per month. So I think that starts in 2023. But this Medicare premium reduction, my payments are going to go down from what they are now, about a little over $231 or something a month, to a little bit less. I think it's going to go down to about $178 a month. So I'll see some savings there. And to be honest with you, if I wasn't getting the help I got, I wouldn't have $1 to pay any of that. But because I am getting some help, I'm able to afford that. And because of the other programs they're pointing me to, they're trying to reduce I've got 30 pills to take. Initially, I'm going to be taking some insulin because I'm having a few high glucose readings a week, and I've got to take a couple of units of insulin. That will go away as they reduce one of the medications I'm taking. That will go away, but for at least the first month, I'm going to have some insulin costs and all of that. So, all in all, they tell me, other than the drainage thing that's keeping me here, I say I'm running circles around the other lung transplant patients that they've recently dealt with. They're kind of really, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but they're really optimistic, that I'm walking around and seem to be well on the way of where I, want to be. But it's like I say, with COVID, the increased risk of infection, I've got to take really extreme caution. So even Dut and I, we've decided that we're going to be masked whenever we're in the same room together, whenever we're in the car together. We're not going to be lazy about it. We've kind of thought, so we can take a break from that at least some part of the day. When we're not in the same room, when I'm in my room, whether because I want to get on the computer or whether because I want to, lay down or sleep, if he's anywhere in the house, then neither of us have to wear a mask. If he's in the kitchen or if he's in the living room or in his bedroom. But whenever we're in the same room, we're both going to mask. And anybody that wants to come to visit me, I'll probably keep them at least 6-10 feet away, and they'll have to be masked. They'll just have to be. And or they won't come in. And I'll be real reluctant to let people I don't know in. So for instance, if I need a service, somebody to come in and repair something or something like that, I'm probably going to get in my bedroom, be super masked, make sure that they're masked while they're in the house, and do what they need to do. One of the things I need to address is I get water in the basement whenever we get a heavy rain. And so there are a lot of times during the year where there's a little water around the walls. And I run a dehumidifier and get rid of it. But there may be some mold down there. It's not a healthy environment. And, we have a ventilation system along with heater ducts that come from the furnace downstairs. There are just open air ducts so the air can circulate, from the basement into the different rooms upstairs. And so I don't know much about mold or those kind of things, but, there's a potential for little spores or whatever to kick up into the air. And, and all my clothes are washed downstairs. It's probably not safe to have them down there in that environment. I prefer that once they're washed, once they're dried, they're immediately brought upstairs. Those are the things that Dut will have to do. So at any rate, one of the things I'm thinking of doing is to have like a mold specialist come and test the basement and see if I have any issues with that. I can't afford, some $15,000 thing where they, dig a trench around the walls and put some kind of coverings on my cement block and set up sump pumps and all of those kind of things that they do with basement waterproofing. But what I can do is there are less expensive things that they can do to remove mold, if there's any, to apply some kind of a substance that can maybe help seal the walls and kind of treat that so that there is no buildup of mold. And I don't know what that costs. It seems to me I need to have it tested and see what those costs would be, and do whatever I have to do to get that done if necessary. I'm hoping we can do that for, I don't know where I'd come up with the money, but maybe there's a way I can do that for $1,500 or something, and not the $15,000 or something that full, all out repair work would entail. So I try not to worry about the costs and just do the best I can. But you got to know what you're dealing with and make the best attempts you can afford to do. So number one is to have the money to get back and forth to the hospital, and two, to be able to afford the medications that I have to take. So that's it. I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching. I'll see you real soon.